Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. It started innocently enough, or at least, that's what I thought. When Melissa told me she wanted to go on a girls' trip to Cancun with her college friends, I didn't hesitate to say yes. She worked hard, deserved a break, and honestly, I trusted her. After 10 years of marriage and 2 kids, Melissa was my rock, my partner, my best friend. The idea of infidelity didn't even cross my mind. Go, have fun, I told her, waving away her concerns about leaving me to handle the kids alone. You deserve it. Are you sure you'll be okay with the kids for 5 days? She asked the night before her flight. Come on, Melissa, I said with a laugh, ruffling her hair. I'm not completely useless. She smiled and kissed me, and that was that. She left for Cancun the next morning, texting me updates throughout her journey. Pictures of palm trees, white sand, and margaritas flooded my phone, and I felt genuinely happy for her, knowing she was making the most of her trip. When Melissa came back from Cancun, she seemed fine, though something about her felt different. At first, I brushed it off as post-vacation blues, but the way she avoided my gaze or how her phone was suddenly glued to her hand began gnawing at me. Everything okay? I asked one night as we sat on the couch. The kids were in bed and she was scrolling on her phone. Of course, she said too quickly. Why wouldn't it be? She leaned over to kiss me, but it felt forced. Something wasn't right, but I didn't want to come off as paranoid, so I let it slide. The storm came 3 days later. It was a Friday night, and I was putting the kids to bed when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Attached were 2 photos. My heart sank as I opened them. The first showed Melissa at a beach club, sitting too closely next to some guy. His arm was draped casually over her shoulder, her smile wide and carefree. The second photo made my stomach twist. Melissa sitting on the guy's lap, leaning into him, his hand resting on her waist. Beneath the photos was a message. Thought you should know what your wife was up to in Cancun. You deserve better. My heart pounded as I reread the message. My mind raced with questions, disbelief, and a creeping sense of betrayal. Who would send this? Why? I quickly typed a response. Who is this? The reply came almost immediately. Someone who thought you should know the truth. Meet me tomorrow at 7 p.m. I'll tell you everything. I'll send the location in the morning. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening as I processed the words. The photos alone were damning, but the text promised more. Something worse. As much as I wanted answers, I wasn't sure I could handle them. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was the image of Melissa and that guy. So close, so intimate. It felt like a knife twisting in my chest, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The images haunted me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The next day dragged on. I tried to go through the motions, getting the kids ready, making breakfast, doing the usual chores, but my mind was elsewhere. Every time I glanced at my phone, I was reminded of the message. 7 p.m., just a few hours away. The waiting was unbearable. By 6:30 p.m., I was pacing the living room, my stomach in knots. I checked my phone again, but there was still no message with the location. Maybe it was all a prank. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Finally, just as the clock struck 7, my phone buzzed. It was a new message, and my heart skipped a beat as I opened it. Meet me at the old diner on Pine Street. I'll be in a booth by the window. It was short and to the point. No explanation, no pleasantries. I hesitated for a moment, staring at the screen. What the hell was I about to walk into? But there was no turning back. I had to know the truth. I grabbed my jacket and drove in silence, the hum of the engine the only sound in the car. Pine Street was a stretch of forgotten businesses, old and run down. The diner was a relic from another time, its neon sign flickering in the twilight. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw a single car parked near the entrance. I took a deep breath and walked inside. The air smelled of stale coffee and grease, and the low hum of quiet chatter filled the space. I scanned the room until I saw her, Nancy. She had been Melissa's best friend since college, and I had never suspected her of being involved in any of this. She was sitting alone in a booth by the window, her eyes trained on her phone, completely unaware of my approach. I knew she had been with Melissa on the trip to Cancun, and suddenly, the pieces of this puzzle felt like they were about to fall into place. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say, how to react, but then she looked up and met my gaze. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a slight glint in her eyes, almost like she was enjoying this moment. She gestured for me to sit across from her, and I did, my heart pounding in my chest. "Well, Chris," she said softly, her voice low, "I see you got my message." I didn't know how to respond. I was furious, confused, and hurt all at once. "You didn't have to do this, Nancy. You didn't have to send me those photos." She leaned back in the booth, folding her arms across her chest. "You think I wanted to? But there's more." She grabbed her phone and turned it toward me, showing me more photos. These were worse. Melissa and that guy, kissing, their faces close, lips locked in a passionate embrace. Then she swiped to a video, and my stomach churned as I watched it. I could barely hear the sound over the ringing in my ears, but it didn't matter. The images were enough. I looked away, unable to process what I was seeing. "Why are you doing this?" Nancy exhaled slowly, her gaze unwavering. "I did it because you deserve to know what's really been going on. You deserve the truth, not the lies she's been feeding you." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "What do you mean by that? What's going on?" Nancy's eyes softened for a moment, but then she looked away, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. "Melissa's not the person you think she is, Chris. She's been cheating on you for a while now, and not just with this guy in Cancun." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, not just with him? How long has this been happening?" She exhaled sharply, her eyes meeting mine again, a mixture of sadness and bitterness in her gaze. "Months, maybe longer. She's been seeing him. His name is Brian. They've been meeting up when you're at work or when you're busy with the kids. I never wanted to get involved, but I couldn't stand seeing you get hurt any longer." The words hit me like a freight train, and I felt like the ground was slipping out from under me. Brian? Who the hell was Brian? I had never heard of him before, but Nancy's words were clear. The betrayal went far deeper than the Cancun incident. I struggled to stay calm. "So why are you telling me this now? Why send me those photos?" Nancy leaned forward, her eyes filled with a quiet urgency. "Because I couldn't stand seeing you continue to live a lie. And I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did. Melissa's always been selfish, Chris. She'll lie to your face and you'll never know the truth unless someone shows you." I clenched my fists under the table, fighting back a flood of emotions. My hands were shaking, but I wasn't going to cry, not in front of Nancy. "So, you've known all along? You've known that she was cheating and you didn't tell me?" Nancy's face fell slightly, guilt flashing across her features. "I didn't want to ruin everything. I didn't want to tear your family apart. I told her multiple times to stop, but she didn't listen. I couldn't keep silent anymore. You deserve to know what she was doing behind your back." My head was spinning. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Melissa, the woman I had trusted with my life, had been deceiving me for months. And Nancy, my wife's best friend, had known about it. I stood up suddenly, the weight of the conversation too much to bear. "I need to go. I need to think." Nancy didn't stop me. She just nodded quietly as I turned to leave. The drive home was the longest I had ever taken. My mind raced with everything Nancy had told me, and all I could feel was anger, betrayal, shock. How could Melissa do this to me, to our family? The images and the words kept looping in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. When I got home, Melissa was sitting on the couch, scrolling on her phone. She looked tired, but when she saw me walk in, she straightened up. The kids were already in bed, and the house was eerily quiet. "Chris, where have you been?" she asked, her voice soft, but edged with curiosity. I walked in slowly, my eyes locking onto hers. "We need to talk." Her smile faded instantly. Her eyes darted nervously as I sat down across from her. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "Melissa," I began, leaning forward. "I know what's been going on. I know about Cancun, about Brian, about everything." Her face went pale, and for a moment she looked like she might faint. "What do you mean?" she whispered, her voice shaky. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos Nancy had sent me. I slid it across the table toward her. This is what I mean." Melissa picked up the phone, her hands trembling as she stared at the images. I saw the color drain from her face as her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. When she finally looked up at me, tears were already forming in her eyes. "Chris, she stammered. "It's not what it looks like." "Really?" I shot back, my voice sharp and rising with anger. You didn't think I'd find out? You didn't think the truth would eventually come to light? Tears spilled over onto her cheeks. Chris, I'm sorry, she said, her voice cracking. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It wasn't about you, it's me. I wasn't satisfied in bed, so I started sleeping with other guys. But it didn't mean anything. I didn't want to hurt you. I love you. I stared at her, the words hitting me like a slap. My chest felt tight, my breath short. Do you hear yourself right now? I said, my voice trembling with disbelief. So because you weren't satisfied, you thought it was okay to start sleeping with other men? What about our family? Did you even think about that for a second? Or was it all about you? She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Chris, it's not a big deal, she mumbled through her tears. When I sleep with them, it doesn't mean anything to me. I love you. I don't care about them. I just use these guys to have fun. You're the one I want. I froze, staring at her in utter disbelief. Not a big deal, I said, my voice dropping dangerously low. You threw our family away for something that doesn't mean anything? You broke my trust, Melissa. You destroyed everything we built. And for what? She looked up at me, her tear-streaked face desperate. Chris, please, she pleaded. We can work through this. It's just sleeping with someone else. It doesn't change how I feel about you. I shook my head, standing up, my hands clenched into fists. I can't believe this. I don't even know who you are anymore, Melissa. I thought I did, but I was wrong. I can't look at you the same way. Chris, please, she whispered again, her voice breaking. I love you. I paused for a moment, her words hanging in the air, but they felt empty, like echoes in a hollow room. I shook my head, my jaw clenched tightly as I fought back the surge of emotions. I can't do this anymore, Melissa, I said, my voice cold and resolute. I'm filing for divorce. This, whatever this is, it's broken beyond repair. Her face crumpled, and she let out a choked sob. Chris, no. Please don't do this. We can fix this. Think about the kids. I stared at her, my heart heavy but unwavering. I did think about them, and I can't let them grow up in a home built on lies and betrayal. They deserve better than this. I deserve better than this. Her cries followed me as I stood up and walked out of the room. My mind was made up. It was over. There was no going back. The weeks following the confrontation were some of the hardest of my life. Filing for divorce felt like an admission of failure, but there was no other option. Melissa had shattered my trust, and there was no piecing it back together. She begged me to reconsider at first, her pleas filled with promises of therapy and change. We can fix this, Chris, she said through tears. We can save our family. But it was too late. You made your choice, Melissa, I told her. Now, I'm making mine. When Melissa discovered Nancy had told me everything, she confronted her in a rage, accusing her of betrayal. Nancy stood firm. You ruined your own life, Melissa. I just told the truth. Their years of friendship ended bitterly, but Nancy seemed unfazed, confident she'd done the right thing. Telling the kids was gut-wrenching. We sat them down together, explaining as gently as we could that we wouldn't be living in the same house anymore. Mommy and Daddy still love you very much, I said, trying to stay calm. Their tears broke my heart, and I silently cursed Melissa for putting us in this position. The divorce proceedings were tense. Melissa resisted splitting assets and fought hard for more time with the kids, but eventually, we settled on joint custody. Selling the house felt like losing one more piece of the life I had worked so hard to build. In the end, though, I realized that life doesn't stop just because something breaks. It's messy, painful, and unfair, but it moves forward. I found strength in my kids and in knowing I was doing what was right for myself and for them. Melissa and I would always be connected through our children, but I had made peace with letting go of everything else. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the one I had, and I was determined to make it better, not just for me, but for them. Thank you for watching.